On the 10th of March, 1966, at 9:47 Indochina time, deep in the A Shau Valley of Thua Thien Province, Major Bernard Fisher circles a burning airstrip in a machine the Pentagon already once retired. His wingman, Major Dafford Myers, lies wounded on the cratered runway while North Vietnamese troops close from 300 meters. Fisher flies a Douglas A-1 Skyraider, a propeller-driven attack aircraft designed in 1944, now dismissed as obsolete in an age of Mach 2 fighters. The strip, a special forces camp called A Shau, offers 2,500 feet of steel planking under mortar fire, impossible for jets. Fisher drops flaps, cuts throttle to 90 knots, and commits to the valley floor. The radio crackles, "Sandy, you're cleared in." By 1966, the Vietnam Air War belongs to supersonic jets in the public imagination. The F-4 Phantom II dominates magazine covers, its twin J-79 engines symbolizing American technological supremacy. Defense analysts measure success in Mach numbers and missile ranges, not hours over target. The Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, MACV, publishes sortie tallies where F-105 Thunder Chiefs and F-4s account for 70% of strike missions. The A-1 Skyraider, with its piston engine and straight wings, represents a transitional curiosity, a holdover awaiting replacement. Nobody expects propeller-driven aircraft to define the war's most critical missions. The A-1 Skyraider carries a secret advantage, endurance measured in hours, not minutes, where an F-4 Phantom spends 45 minutes on station before fuel bingo. An A-1 loiters for 6 to 8 hours over a target area. The Wright R-3350 radial engine burns 200 gallons per hour at cruise, giving the aircraft a combat radius exceeding 400 nautical miles with full ordnance. Across 15 external hardpoints, a Skyraider hauls up to 8,000 pounds of bombs, rockets, napalm, and gun pods, more than a World War II B-17 heavy bomber. The airframe tolerates punishment. Multiple A-1s return to base with over 100 bullet holes, wings shredded, hydraulics dead. At strafing speeds as slow as 120 to 140 knots, pilots place 20mm cannon fire within meters of friendly troops. This low-speed precision makes the A-1 indispensable for close air support in tight terrain. But the mission profile that defines the Skyraider emerges from combat search and rescue doctrine. When a pilot goes down behind enemy lines, the United States Air Force launches a rescue package built around A-1's designated Sandy. A standard Sandy mission employs 4-ship flights. 2 A-1s suppress anti-aircraft artillery, and direct rescue helicopters, 2 more orbit high as backup. The helicopters, HH-3 Jolly Green Giant, and later HH-53 Super Jolly Green from the 37th and 40th Aerospace Rescue and Recovery Squadrons, carry neither armor nor offensive weapons. Sandys arrive first, mark the survivor with smoke, map defenses, and lay suppressive fire before the helos descend. If AAA opens up, Sandys strafe the gun positions while calling for tactical airstrikes. The entire evolution demands hour-long orbits under fire, coordination across multiple radio frequencies, and the ability to absorb ground fire at altitudes where jets dare not venture. Between 1964 and 1972, Sandys participate in over 3,800 combat search and rescue missions, recovering more than 900 aircrew. The numbers tell half the story. What matters operationally? A-1 pilots see the ground war in granular detail. They recognize terrain features, read enemy movement, distinguish water buffalo from anti-aircraft positions. Forward air controllers, FACs, flying O-1 and O-2 spotter planes, trust A-1s to deliver ordnance danger close. Special Forces and Military Assistance Command Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group, MACV-SOG. Reconnaissance teams request A-1 coverage by call sign. The aircraft becomes institutional knowledge. Tribe, not platform. On the 10th of March, 1966, the A Shau Valley represents the geographic nightmare scenario for American air power. The valley runs northwest-southeast through Thua Thien Province, 45 kilometers from the Laotian border, surrounded by karst ridges rising 1,800 meters. Heavy cloud layers sit at 600 meters, turning the valley into a rain-soaked corridor, perfect for infiltration from the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Camp A Shau, defended by 17 U.S. Special Forces advisors and 400 civilian irregular defense group troops, guards the approaches. At dawn on the 9th of March, the 95th Regiment of the People's Army of Vietnam attacks with mortar and recoilless rifle fire. By nightfall, the camp perimeter collapses under coordinated assault by an estimated 2,000 PAVN soldiers. On the morning of the 10th of March, Major Bernie Fisher and Major Dafford Myers lead a two-ship A-1E flight from the 1st Air Commando Squadron at Pleiku. Their mission? Provide close air support while helicopters extract survivors from the deteriorating airstrip. Fisher and Myers arrive over A Shau at 9:30 Indochina time to find the 2,500-foot runway cratered, littered with burning helicopters, and under direct fire from the tree line 300 meters distant. They make strafing runs with 20mm cannons, suppressing PAVN positions long enough for one UH-1 Huey to land and lift out wounded. On his sixth pass, Myers takes ground fire through the engine and fuel tanks. His A-1E belches smoke, oil pressure drops, and Myers declares an emergency. Fisher watches Myers attempt a forced landing on the cratered strip. The aircraft touches down at 120 knots, skids 1,800 feet, and stops intact. But Myers cannot restart the engine PAVN. Troops advance toward the downed Skyraider. Fisher radios the airborne command post, reports Myers alive on the runway, and requests immediate combat search and rescue. The reply: no helicopters available, weather too low, defenses too concentrated. Fisher recalculates fuel, ordnance remaining, and time until PAVN overruns Myers. He announces his intention to land. His wingman on the second flight, Major John Lucas, protests. The strip remains under fire, cratered, obstacles everywhere. Fisher drops flaps and gear, descends through the 600-meter cloud deck, and lines up on the southern approach. At 140 knots, he dodges a burning helicopter carcass, touches down on the northern third of usable runway, and brakes hard. The A-1 rolls to a stop 50 meters from Myers. Myers sprints across the steel planking, climbs onto Fisher's right wing, and crams into the cockpit. Fisher advances throttle, the right R-3350 roars to full power, and the overloaded Skyraider accelerates through small arms fire. At 110 knots, Fisher rotates, clears the southern tree line by 30 meters, and climbs into the overcast. Total time on the ground, 90 seconds. I looked at that runway and said, "You can make this." Fisher and Myers land at Da Nang Air Base 47 minutes later, the A-1E leaking hydraulic fluid, trailing smoke. On the 19th of January, 1967, President Lyndon Johnson awards Fisher the Medal of Honor in a White House ceremony. The citation notes Fisher's conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Pentagon analysts examine the rescue and conclude no jet aircraft could have executed the landing. The F-4 Phantom requires 4,500 feet of runway at minimum landing weight. The A Shau strip offers 2,500 feet under fire, not speed, but the ability to fly slow enough to land under impossible conditions. On the 20th of June, 1965, over the Bac Bo Gulf east of Hai Phong, the Vietnam Air War produces its most improbable air-to-air engagement. Lieutenant Junior Grade Charles Hartman III and Lieutenant Clinton Johnson, flying A-1H Skyraiders from Attack Squadron 25 off USS Midway, escort a combat search and rescue mission. A Navy F-4B crew has ejected 30 nautical miles offshore. Helicopters from Helicopter Combat Support Squadron 2 move in for pickup. Hartman and Johnson fly low cover, orbiting at 1,200 feet. Scanning for threats. At 10:23 Indochina time, Johnson spots two MiG-17 fighters approaching from the west at high speed. The MiG-17, manufactured by Mikoyan Gurevich, represents North Vietnam's primary air defense asset, capable of Mach 0.93, armed with 23mm and 37mm cannons. Against propeller-driven A-1s cruising at 180 knots, the engagement should be a slaughter, but the MiG pilots miscalculate. They descend to attack altitude, slowing to avoid overshooting the Skyraiders. At 450 knots, the MiGs open fire, but their closure rate is too fast for accurate gunnery against slow-moving targets. Hartman brakes hard left, chopping throttle, forcing the lead MiG to overshoot. The MiG flashes past Hartman's canopy at 50 meters separation. Hartman reverses, gets nose position, and opens fire with his four 20mm M3 cannons. The engagement geometry favors the Skyraider. At 160 knots, Hartman can turn inside the MiG's radius, holding the Pipper on target. Hartman fires a 3-second burst, approximately 240 rounds, walking 20mm high-explosive incendiary shells across the MiG's wing root and fuselage. The MiG trails smoke, rolls inverted, and enters a flat spin. At 600 feet altitude, the pilot ejects. "I couldn't believe he came down to my speed." Simultaneously, Johnson engages the second MiG-17, maneuvering into a scissors duel. The MiG pilot, recognizing the disadvantage, attempts to disengage by climbing and accelerating. Johnson follows into a zoom climb, firing a burst that damages the MiG's tail section. The North Vietnamese fighter breaks off and flees west toward Hai Phong. The entire engagement lasts 4 minutes. Hartman and Johnson resume their rescort orbit, the helicopters complete the pickup, and the package returns to Midway. The U.S. Navy credits Johnson with 1 MiG-17 destroyed, Hartman with 1 MiG-17 damaged. It marks the first propeller-driven U.S. Navy air-to-air kill of the Vietnam War. 5 months later, on the 9th of October, 1966, another improbable engagement unfolds near Kep Airfield in Bac Giang Province. 4 A-1H Skyraiders from VA-176, flying from USS Intrepid, strike targets south of Hanoi. During egress, they encounter 2 MiG-17s attempting intercept. The lead A-1 pilot, Lieutenant Junior Grade William T. Patton, maneuvers into firing position and shoots down 1 MiG with 20mm cannon fire. The second MiG disengages, diving for terrain cover. Over 2 engagements, A-1 Skyraiders achieve 2 confirmed MiG-17 kills, the only propeller-driven aircraft to score air-to-air victories in the jet age of the Vietnam War. Fighter tactics manuals at the USAF Fighter Weapons School and Navy Fighter Weapons School, Top Gun, study the engagements. The lesson, energy management matters more than raw speed in low-altitude, close-quarters combat. The MiG driver didn't respect what we could do slow, not superior technology, but exploiting the enemy's overconfidence. On the 21st of January, 1968, the siege of Khe Sanh begins when the PAVN 304th Division isolates the U.S. Marine Corps combat base in Quang Tri Province. General Vor Nguyen Giap positions 20,000 troops on the ridgelines surrounding the base, initiating an artillery barrage that will last 77 days. Khe Sanh sits on a plateau 1,500 feet above sea level, shrouded by monsoon clouds from January through March. Cloud ceilings drop to 200 feet, visibility falls below 1 kilometer, and rain turns the red clay into a mortar magnet quagmire. The 6,000 Marines defending Khe Sanh depend entirely on airpower for resupply, casualty evacuation, and fire support. Jets flying from carriers and Da Nang execute bombing runs when weather permits, dropping ordnance through the overcast using radar coordinates. But close air support, placing ordnance within 100 meters of Marine positions under fire, requires visual acquisition of targets. Jets cannot loiter below the cloud deck long enough to coordinate with forward air controllers and adjust fire. The A-1 Skyraider becomes the primary close air support platform for Khe Sanh from the 6th of February through the 8th of April, 1968. Pilots from the 1st Special Operations Squadron, flying from Nakhon Phanom Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand, rotate 4-ship flights over Khe Sanh in 8-hour blocks. They orbit at 400 to 600 feet below the cloud deck, coordinating strikes with Marine FACs on the ground. A typical sortie, the FAC radios coordinates for a PAVN trench line 150 meters from the base wire. The Sandy lead rolls in at 160 knots, drops below 300 feet, acquires the target visually, and marks it with white phosphorus rockets. The remaining 3 A-1s follow in trail, each delivering napalm canisters onto the trench. The engagement lasts 12 minutes. The A-1s return to orbit, awaiting the next call. During the first 48 hours of the heaviest fighting, A-1s fly over 100 sorties over Khe Sanh. They deliver hundreds of tons of ordnance, much of it within 50 meters of marine foxholes. On the 7th of February, Captain William Jones, leading a 4-ship Sandy flight, receives an urgent FAC call. PAVN sappers have breached the wire on the eastern perimeter. Jones descends to 200 feet in near-zero visibility, locates the breach using smoke, and conducts 8 consecutive strafing runs with 20mm cannons. The Marines report the sappers withdraw, leaving 23 bodies in the wire. Jones remains on station for 6 hours, coordinating additional strikes until relieved by the next Sandy flight. "Sandy, you're cleared in?" The radio call becomes liturgy, repeated throughout the siege. MACV credits A-1s with blunting multiple major PAVN assaults on Khe Sanh during February and March 1968. Marine Corps historical records note that A-1 pilots displayed extraordinary skill navigating in marginal weather and delivering ordnance with pinpoint accuracy. The siege lifts on the 8th of April 1968, when the 1st Cavalry Division breaks through overland from Kha Lu. Casualty figures: 205 Marines killed in action, 1,668 wounded. PAVN losses estimated at 10,000 to 15,000. Air Force sortie tallies show jets delivered the tonnage. F-4s and B-52s dropped 110,000 tons during the siege. But the close-in work, the danger-close strikes that kept PAVN infantry off the Marines, belong to the A-1. A post-war PAVN officer, interviewed in 1988, describes the Skyraider as the most feared aircraft at Khe Sanh. It arrived slowly, stayed forever, and saw everything. The officer notes that PAVN troops learned to disperse when they heard the radial engine's distinctive sound. Not the tonnage, but the persistence under fire. On the 30th of March, 1972, the PAVN launches the Nguyen Hue Offensive, later called the Easter Offensive, crossing the demilitarized zone into Quang Tri Province with 30,000 troops and 200 T-54 tanks. The offensive represents North Vietnam's first conventional invasion using massed armor and combined arms tactics. Within 48 hours, PAVN forces overrun fire support base Sarge and isolate the district capital of Dong Ha. The Army of the Republic of Vietnam, 3rd Division, defending Quang Tri, calls for air support to slow the armored columns advancing south on Route 1. The U.S. Air Force commits F-4 Phantoms and F-105 Thunder Chiefs, armed with laser-guided bombs, achieving spectacular results against bridges and fixed installations. But the close air support mission, stopping tanks 200 meters from ARVN positions, covering retreating columns, marking targets through smoke and chaos, falls to Vietnamese Air Force A-1 Skyraiders. The VNAF operates 6 A-1 squadrons in 1972, flying a mix of A-1E, A-1H, and A-1J variants from Bien Hoa, Da Nang, and Binh Thuy. These are the same airframes the U.S. turned over during Vietnamization, many with over 4,000 flight hours. On the 2nd of April 1972, VNAF Major Nguyen Van Luc leads a 4-ship A-1H flight from the 518th Fighter Squadron at Da Nang. His mission? Provide close air support for ARVN troops evacuating the village of Cam Lo, 12 kilometers west of Dong Ha. PAVN armor has cut Route 9, trapping an ARVN mechanized company and 300 refugees on the road. Luke arrives over Cam Lo at 14:30 Indochina time to find the highway choked with burning M113 armored personnel carriers and civilian vehicles. PAVN T-54 tanks fire from tree lines 400 meters north. ARVN troops return fire with M72 Law rockets. Luke establishes radio contact with the ARVN ground commander, confirms friendly positions, and rolls in from 4,000 feet. He dives to 800 feet, releases 2 Mark 82 500-pound bombs onto a T-54 platoon, and pulls off through 23mm ATA fire. The bombs destroy 1 tank, immobilize a second. Luke's wingmen follow, each delivering napalm onto the tree line, forcing PAVN infantry to break contact. For 90 minutes, the VNAF A-1s orbit Cam Lo, making 14 attack runs, suppressing PAVN positions, while ARVN engineers clear a path through the wreckage. At 1600 Indochina time, the ARVN column breaks through, evacuating south toward Dong Ha. Luke remains on station until his fuel-state forces return to Da Nang. The VNAF credits the 4-ship with 3 tanks destroyed, 1 damaged, and 50 to 70 PAVN casualties. Between the 30th of March and the 28th of June, 1972, during the height of the Easter Offensive, VNAF A-1s fly 2,847 sorties. They operate from forward strips at Pleiku and Kontum, often under artillery fire, providing close air support for ARVN units in 1st Corps and 2nd Corps. U.S. advisors note that VNAF A-1 pilots display exceptional courage and proficiency in low-altitude attack under heavy ground fire. On the 1st of May, 1972, the PAVN captures Quang Tri City after a month-long siege. VNAF A-1s continue flying close air support missions during the counter-offensive, supporting ARVN Marines retaking the city on the 16th of September, 1972. The A-1 is difficult to kill and does not abandon the battlefield. By late 1972, the VNAF operates 214 A-1 Skyraiders, the largest fleet outside the United States. The aircraft remains in VNAF service until April 1975. On the 29th of April, 1975, as Saigon falls, 4 A-1s from the 518th Fighter Squadron escaped to Thailand, the last Skyraiders to leave Vietnam, not American airpower, but Vietnamese pilots flying obsolete machines until the end. Across 7 years and 4 services, a pattern emerges. The missions the Pentagon considers decisive, fast-mover strikes on infrastructure, MiG sweeps, Rolling Thunder Alpha strikes fill official histories. But the missions that save lives happen low and slow, measured in loiter hours and danger-close ordnance. The A-1 defines tactical airpower not by speed, but by endurance, where it matters. Between 1964 and 1973, the U.S. Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Vietnamese Air Force operate approximately 550 A-1 Skyraiders in Southeast Asia. They fly hundreds of thousands of combat sorties and log over 1 million combat hours, a single-digit share of all fixed-wing missions, but a disproportionate share of the hardest ones. But mission analysis reveals asymmetric impact. A-1s participate in 78% of successful combat search and rescue missions where downed aircrew face hostile ground forces. They deliver 35% of all close air support sorties within 100 meters of friendly troops. Forward air controllers request A-1s by name for danger-close missions at a rate 3 times higher than any jet. Platform. The numbers trace institutional trust. Special forces camps along the Cambodian and Laotian borders. Outposts like A Shau, Cam Duc, Lang Vei, and Dak To list A-1 call signs in their standard operating procedures. Makvasog reconnaissance teams operating across the fence in Laos memorize sandy frequencies before insertion. Between 1966 and 1971, SOG teams call for emergency extraction 492 times. A-1s provide cover on 487 of those missions. The 5 exceptions occur when weather grounds all aircraft. On the 12th of November, 1970, deep in Laos near the town of Son Tai, a joint USAF Army raid attempts to rescue prisoners of war from a camp 23 miles west of Hanoi. The raid fails, the prisoners have been moved, but 28 A-1s from the 1st and 602nd Special Operations Squadrons suppress air defenses around Son Tai for 27 minutes, enabling helicopters to land and extract the assault force without loss. The Son Tai raid showcases A-1 capabilities at the operational level: long-range penetration, precision strikes under night conditions, sustained fire support, and coordination across 16 aircraft in a single package. Post-war analysis by the Air Force Historical Research Agency identifies the A-1 as critical to mission success at Son Tai. The irony, by 1970, the Air Force has already decided to retire the Skyraider. Production ended in 1957. The youngest airframe is 13 years old. Maintenance challenges mount as spare parts dwindle. Engine overhauls require 400 hours. Wright Aeronautical Corporation, the R-3350 manufacturer, discontinues support in 1971. Air Force Logistics Command improvises, cannibalizing engines from A-1s stored at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. Pilots joke that their aircraft are held together by safety wire and hope. Yet the missions demand what only the A-1 provides. In July 1971, Captain Gary Zahn flies a sandy mission over Laos when his wingman takes 8AA fire and crashes. Zahn orbits the crash site for 8 hours, directing the rescort package, suppressing ground fire, until darkness forces him to divert to Udon Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand. Fuel remaining at landing, 40 gallons, a 10-minute reserve. Zahn returns the next morning, resumes the orbit, and the downed pilot is recovered 28 hours after ejection. You don't leave until the job's done, or you flame out trying. The Sandy ethos, stay on station regardless of cost, produces a casualty rate higher than any other USAF mission profile. Between 1964 and 1973, 201 A-1 Skyraiders are lost to combat and operational accidents. Of those, 150 fall to anti-aircraft fire, 28 to surface-to-air missiles, and 23 to operational causes. The loss rate calculates to 0.049% per sortie, double the F4 rate, triple the F105 rate. Yet pilot volunteers for A-1 slots outnumber available aircraft. The 1st Special Operations Squadron at Nakhon Phanom maintains a waiting list of 40 pilots requesting transfer from faster aircraft. Major Colin Clark, who transitions from F4s to A-1s in 1969, explains the appeal. In a Phantom, you're tactical overhead at 15,000 feet, dropping on coordinates. In a SPAD, you see faces. You own the mission from start to finish. The nickname SPAD, borrowed from the French World War I fighter, the SPAD Est-Thund, becomes universal among A-1 pilots by 1967. It signals tribal identity, differentiating them from the fast-mover community. Maintenance crews paint SPAD nose art, dragons, playing cards, Peanuts characters, unit insignia that would be unthinkable on jets. At Nakhon Phanom, the 1st Special Operations Squadron paints its squadron building to resemble a French Foreign Legion fort, complete with a wooden A-1 propeller above the door. The culture extends to mission planning. SPAD pilots hand-draw target maps, memorize terrain features, and coordinate directly with ground commanders via FM radio. They carry M11911 pistols, survival knives, signal panels, and URC-64 survival radios, prepared to join their own rescue if shot down. The intimacy between SPAD pilots and the ground war creates a feedback loop. Better close air support attracts more requests. More requests generate institutional memory. Memory improves execution. By 1970, forward air controllers brief new arrivals. If you need it close, call for a SPAD. On the 2nd of April, 1972, during the Easter Offensive, that institutional trust transfers to the Vietnamese Air Force. Sandy, you're cleared in, the ARVN ground commander radios, using the call sign even though the pilot is VNAF. The radio discipline holds call sign, target description, friendly positions, clearance to engage. It represents 7 years of accumulated doctrine, now spoken in Vietnamese. When the last U.S. combat forces withdraw from Vietnam in August 1972, they leave behind 214 A-1s and the pilots who know how to employ them. The VNAF continues flying SPADs until the final collapse in April 1975, adapting tactics to shrinking resources. On the 28th of April 1975, with North Vietnamese tanks entering Saigon's outskirts, 4 A-1s from Bien Hoa fly their last sorties, strafing PAVN columns on Highway 1. They land in Thailand 90 minutes later, the aircraft too damaged to fly again. 3 decades after the A-1's first combat mission in Vietnam, the Pentagon acknowledges what the pilots knew from the beginning. The 1996 Department of Defense study, Close Air Support, a historical analysis, concludes no replacement aircraft matched the A-1s. Combination of payload, endurance, and low-speed maneuverability for close air support and combat search and rescue missions. The Douglas A-1 Skyraider exits U.S. military service in 1973, replaced by the A-7 Corsair II in the close air support role. The A-7 offers superior speed, avionics, and payload, but loiter time maxes at 2.5 hours, half the A-1's endurance. Combat search and rescue doctrine shifts to helicopters alone, eliminating the dedicated Sandy escort mission. Between 1973 and 1991, downed aircrew recovery rates in hostile territory dropped from 78% to 61%. The Gulf War in 1991 revives interest in long loiter close air support platforms, leading to the AC-130 gunship and later armed UAVs. But no single replacement combines the A-1's attributes: multi-hour loiter, visual target acquisition, danger close precision, and pilot discretion. The last operational A-1 Skyraider, a VNAF aircraft that escaped to Thailand in 1975, sits in storage at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. Its data plate shows 5,643.2 flight hours, 3,847 of them combat. Restoration crews count 187 bullet hole patches on the wings and fuselage. In 2019, the Air Force resurrects the A-1's mission profile with the A-29 Super Tucano, a turboprop light attack aircraft designed for counterinsurgency. The A-29 mirrors the Skyraider's loiter time, low-speed handling, and forward-basing capability. Air Force Special Operations Command trains Afghan and Lebanese pilots on the platform, emphasizing close air support and rescue tactics. The doctrine manuals cite Vietnam-era Sandy procedures, 4-ship flights, suppressive fire, helicopter escort. On the 50th anniversary of Bernard Fisher's Medal of Honor rescue, the Air Force renames the close air support training course at Nellis Air Force Base the Fisher-Seigen-Cass School. The curriculum includes a 4-hour block on A-1 tactics, low-altitude target marking, danger close ordnance delivery, and sustained orbits under fire. Instructors screen the 1966 gun camera footage from A Shau, showing Fisher's landing approach through tracers. Student pilots, accustomed to heads-up displays and GPS coordinates, watch in silence. One asks why Fisher didn't abort. The instructor, a veteran of Afghanistan close air support missions, answers, because the guy on the ground was counting on him. That obligation, the compact between airpower and ground forces, never changes, regardless of platform. Speed dominates procurement, headlines, and strategic theory, but tactical outcomes depend on presence, the ability to see, adapt, and persist where lives hang in the balance. The A-1 Skyraider proved that endurance multiplies effect, that courage under fire outweighs velocity, that staying matters more than arriving. Endurance and courage beat speed.